Hi everyone, happy Friday. So I haven't done a video for this channel in a while. So something I wanted to talk about today are some things that, people say to people that deal with anxiety. They think they're helping them, but in fact it has an adverse effect on them. It actually makes them feel more anxious and just not so good about themselves. And this is something that I've definitely experienced. And, I try not to get mad at that person because maybe the person just thinks that they're helping, but I want to try to educate people. And I've told people so many times, like, oh, these things you should not say to people, like if they're dealing with anxiety, because it actually makes it worse on them. So some common things that people will tell people. So first thing, let's think, is to tell somebody don't worry or don't stress or like don't be anxious. Like that right there is definitely just going to make that person stress more and feel more anxious. It almost like in a way makes them feel like what they're feeling is not real. So if you're telling them, oh, don't stress, like don't be anxious, like you can't just not be anxious. For someone like myself who's dealt with anxiety for like almost 6 years now, if someone told me don't be anxious, it's like it's not something I can stop doing. There are ways to reduce your anxiousness, but it's almost like in a way like, I'm telling you don't have anxiety. Like it's not something that I can stop. It's something I can manage. So that is definitely not helpful. Some other things, for example, if someone were to say you're over exaggerating, like that right there, same thing. It's like that person is not being sympathetic and empathetic. Like, what when a person is really feeling anxious, they tend to feel all these anxiety symptoms, and sometimes it feels like you're having a heart attack. So if you're, for example, anxious about something like, oh, I don't know, something that happened at work per se, and maybe you're thinking like, oh, what I did at work, now I'm gonna that's gonna cause me to get fired. Oh, and now I'm gonna get fired. And even though like probably like that's not gonna happen, like then maybe you start freaking out and then hyperventilating. And so someone might tell you, oh, you're over exaggerating, like you're being ridiculous. That's another term. Exactly, you're being ridiculous, when no, the person is not being ridiculous. Maybe the way they're thinking is not helpful, but it doesn't mean they're being ridiculous. So that's why it always helps to kind of, for me, definitely, where I've definitely had times like that where something I thought I did at work or something, like, oh my god, I'm gonna get fired. But then what I kind of do is cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, I'll go back and I'll be like, okay, so this is what happened at work. And I ask myself, am I actually gonna get fired? Am I actually gonna get in trouble for doing this? And if the answer is no, then that kind of just automatically calms me down. I'm like, okay, maybe I have to start thinking more rationally. Maybe this actually isn't gonna happen. And is this actually true, or is this something I kind of just made up in my head? This is something that I've done with when I've been in therapy and I've done counseling, and it's actually very, very helpful. That automatically will kind of just calm me down, because most of the time thoughts are just thoughts. They're not always accurate, and you don't always have to believe certain thoughts that you're having. So what are some other things that people sometimes tend to say that are not helpful? Yeah, as I mentioned, like, don't worry. I just want to build up upon that one. Don't worry is definitely something that does not help, especially for someone that worries a lot. It's definitely like does not help. I mean, I know probably a lot of people, and myself, if I'm worrying about something and I tell myself don't worry, maybe it'll help for like in the moment for a few minutes, but then like my brain will just go back to continue to worry about that. And there are definitely lots of techniques and things to help with worrying, but some techniques may not help certain people. So that's why there's so many different ones. Like, for example, there is a thing about worrying, this worrying technique where like you tell yourself, and when, especially when you're doing things, okay, I'm not gonna focus on this right now, I'm gonna worry about it later. And then you spend that time, probably not before bed, but say you're just gonna pick a time, okay, I'm gonna spend this 10 minutes and I'm actually gonna worry about it. So then it's like you're not worrying about it all day. For me, that didn't really work because it was kind of weird, because it's like, okay, I'm gonna pick this time to worry, and it's like, well, what if I don't want to worry about it right now? So that technique didn't work for me. What I would kind of do is sometimes write my worries down, and that was almost like they were like getting them off my chest. And then I would kind of just use cognitive behavioral therapy a bit with that, and that would really help me more. So really, you just want to be mindful of what you're saying to people. Sometimes if you don't know that they experience anxiety, then that's a different thing. But you know, if you're becoming more educated in terms of like anxiety and mental health sometimes, and you know that person is dealing with anxiety, just be mindful of what you're saying to them. The smallest thing, if they're having like a really hard day, could just like set them off, you know. And you don't want to be that person that like triggers them, and you don't know what that person's triggers are. So that's why it's always important to be nice to everybody, you know. Like, everybody's gonna have rough and stressful days, and sometimes you may take things out on other people, but always try to be nice to other people, even people you work with, maybe you're not super close with, you know, just be nice to everybody, because you could say one thing that you didn't really mean to say and you could set them off, and it could be a trigger for them. And you know, you don't know what's going on in people's lives, you don't know their mental health situations, so you always want to be nice to people as much as you can. I think that's really important. Trying to think of some other things that I've heard and I've dealt with. Oh yes, now I remember one. So a very common thing that people will say when someone is feeling like down, depressed, or anxious, they'll tell them to just be happy. That I find is very toxic positivity, because in that moment that person is just feeling down, and of course you're saying this because you want to tell them, oh, don't be sad, you know, just be happy, like just smile. And like, there's been times where, you know, you got to fake it till you make it type of thing, and especially maybe it has to happen when you're at work. But say you're at home and you know you're just feeling down, allow that person to just be in that moment, and to just, if they need to cry and they need to like just be sad, let them be sad. Don't force them to be happy. And it's just like, that's, even though sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it, but we all have to have our moments when, you know, when we kind of just want to be sad and, you know, cry for a little bit. But the important thing is you don't want that to drag on for the entire day. Have your moment, cry, be in that moment, and then, you know, try to like uplift yourself. But it is important that, you know, you don't say, oh, smile, just be happy, because then again, that makes that person feel like kind of, what's the word, it doesn't make them feel like they're being heard, you know. And it's just like, oh, just be happy, like what you have is small, not a big deal. And this is actually another thing that people will say that will, to other people that are having anxiety, that definitely will not help, is, oh, people have it worse, people have cancer. While that person is saying that also to try to make them feel better, in that moment that doesn't make them feel that better, because it makes them feel like what they have is not a big deal. So you're saying, oh, people have worse things, people have cancer, people could be dying. But it's just like, what that person is going through to them is a very big deal. And it is a big deal. Mental health and anxiety, when it is not managed and taken care of, it can get the person into a really bad state of mind, and especially with their health as well. People don't realize like anxiety and depression, it causes these physical symptoms and health issues as well. And maybe it may not be as serious as cancer, but you know, telling that person, oh, what you have is not a big deal, like, it just doesn't make them feel good, and that's just going to give that person more anxiety, and then make them think that like, oh, she's not listening to what I'm saying, I'm not being heard, or what I have is not a big deal, when, you know, anxiety is a big deal. But obviously it is something that can be manage. So even though what you're trying to say, you're thinking that it's helping the person, in reality, it's just kind of making them feel worse. You know, when someone is going through a rough time with anxiety or any other mental health disorder, they want to be heard, they want to be spoken to, they want to feel empathetic and sympathetic. You know, sometimes you don't know what to say and you feel like, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So literally just listening and being there, you know, giving them a hug. If they need to cry, let them cry. And, you know, just reminding them to, this will pass, this isn't going to last forever. And, you know, say it's okay to not be okay. These are things that will help people more, and just like being there for them. And like I said, if you don't know exactly what to say, just being there for them and being a good friend, that's what's really important. So I hope you guys will follow these things. Maybe you have a friend or someone that deals with anxiety or a mental health disorder, and it should definitely help if you use those things. So try to avoid all the things that I did mention. I hope everyone has a good Friday, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to like and comment on this video. Thanks so much for listening. Bye.